Hello, and welcome to another episode of Professional Book Girl. My name is Kayla, and I read a ton of books that I can recommend the best to you. And it is currently Sunday night, like mere hours before I'm putting this episode out into the world. I've had a weird week, and we're going to talk about it because it's obviously what I'm obsessed with this week, although there is something else that I was like really obsessed with also. But I was just like, it took me a bit to like get to the mic this week. And that's because on Monday I got laid off. So I don't feel like I owe an explanation about this. I just want to talk about it because it like makes me feel better to talk about things and like my like sharing things like this on the internet. Like when I was unemployed last summer, which we'll talk about, other people were messaging me and they were like, I'm going through it too. And it was just like really helpful. And so I kind of just want to like talk about how I'm feeling about it because hopefully it can help somebody. And I know it'll help me just kind of get it off of my chest. But before we get into that, our July book club pick is Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. That episode will be out on August 1st. Please get your thoughts to me. Either DM them to me at KRadWhat or Professional Book Girl, or email them, type them up and email them to professionalbookgirlpod at gmail.com. I always say that email is so hard for me to say. Or you can record a voice note and send that to me as well to be included in the episode. So on Monday morning, last Monday, July 1st, I woke up and I was like posting, oh, it's my favorite month, happy July, whatever. And then I get on this 12 o'clock call that it was a pre-scheduled call, which kind of just shows like how sinister this is. And I was so blindsided that I didn't even realize HR was on the call because I thought I was going into a Q3 strategy meeting with my entire team because that is what on Friday my boss said we were going to be having. So I didn't check the guest list. And I was so blindsided that even when I noticed right away that it wasn't everybody who would have been on that call, when my then boss said he had news, I thought he was about to say he was leaving. Like, and then he said our jobs have been terminated, which was just really fun. And it happened in a group. And it was like those videos you see on TikTok. And I fully went into shock in that moment. And it was really insane. I literally did not see it coming. I obviously don't want to talk about too much of what happened publicly, but the short version is I was only there for 4 months. It was exactly 4 full months, which is just really fucking frustrating because I had been unemployed for 6 months before that. And I got 2 job offers at the same time. And I chose this job. And I guess I'm so glad I went with this job because at the time it felt right to me. I didn't think I would be happy at the other place. But it is just frustrating because it's like I chose this one and I was just unemployed. But what happened was they brought in like this I was in tech and they brought in this Silicon Valley CMO and he laid off the entire marketing team 2 months into his tenure there. So I weirdly, like, I am okay. I posted it on my story the night, like Monday night, because so last summer when I got laid off, let's just like go back in time for a second. So actually this summer, my last day of work was July 1st. Last summer, my last day of work was August 1st. So last summer I was on a family vacation and the Wednesday of that week at like 6 p.m., the CEO of that company sent an email out to the entire company offering everybody 2-month severance with the promise of imminent layoffs and like a way lesser package. So I'm on vacation. The next day was my birthday. I wake up on my birthday. My boss had been fired. It seemed like they were very unhappy with my team. And basically, like, I had to decide, do I leave with this package or stay and potentially get laid off next week and not get as much? And just like conversations that I had with like my manager and things there, I decided to leave. And that one was traumatic, period. And but it was a different kind of trauma though, because I had to make that decision and it was horrible. And then the aftermath of it, I was like, that was the first time in my adult life I didn't have a job last summer. And I think you guys know, like, I really went through it. And like so many good things came out of it. Like Professional Book Girl was born. I don't think I would have started doing a solo podcast if I hadn't been unemployed. But it was so scary to me because for my whole life, work has never been my life. And I've never like, my identity has never been my job, but I'm like I'm a hard worker. I come from a family of hard workers. Like, not having a job was never an option to me. Like, I got my first, I've been babysitting since I was 12. I got my first real job when I was 18, and I've been working since. So it was crazy for me to suddenly not have a job. And I had to like really like learn, I guess, like learn about myself without a job, and but also like figure things out. So I figured out health insurance. I figured out unemployment. I got a freelance gig. Like I created Professional Book Girl, so I was keeping myself busy. And so it's less scary this time around because I already figured out all of those really hard things. Like, I survived for 6 months, and I had health insurance, and I had money coming in. It obviously was not as much money, but it was still money. And I also, like, during that time, I was really like, I was embarrassed at first, and I was like, I can't believe, like, I just don't have a job. Like, this is, I thought it was embarrassing, and I was like really caught up in my head because I was like, I have so many younger cousins and like younger like teenagers in my life, and I've always been like, I'm a role model to them. And then I was like, and like, I feel like I was like letting everybody down, and that was so not the case. But I kind of like, I'm glad that I went through that, and like, I already know this time around is so much better than that. Like, I'm not embarrassed to say it. I know it had absolutely nothing to do with my work. I know that I'm very good at what I do. So many coworkers from this last job have like reached out to me, like expressing shock, and then also saying like, you are so good at what you do. Like, we cannot believe this, which was nice, obviously. But yeah, this one, so I'm like all over the place. But, like, having to choose whether to leave or not like sucked, because then when I would be like sitting on my couch having a mental breakdown, and be like, I did this to myself, which I didn't, but like I did because I chose to leave. And like, but who knows, you know, you don't know. So I had to just like remind myself that I made the best decision at the time with the information that I was given. This time is different because it's like, I obviously didn't choose it. And it's really disappointing because I really liked my job. I liked the people I worked with. I liked being fully remote. And I also liked having a paycheck after going 6 months without one. So it's just like really frustrating also because, like I said, I was completely blindsided, and it happened on a Monday, and I kind of I went to the pool like an hour later, and I'm glad that I was home at my mom's when it happened. So I was like, so when I started like having a panic attack, like she calmed me down, and like Monday I was like sick to my stomach all day, but then I right away was like, I am not letting this ruin my summer. This month is so insane and exciting. Like, the day you're listening to this, Monday is like my last day to relax for a bit because my brother's wedding is this week. As you're listening, my brother's wedding is on Thursday. Yes, he's getting married on a Thursday. And then the next week I'm on my friend's bachelorette trip. And then the next week is my 30th birthday. And I was like, I'm not letting this ruin my summer. I have been looking forward to summer all year. Like, I am still having a great summer. And like, so far it has not ruined my summer. It was really just that first day where I was not okay. And then the next day I would have been able to do this if I had a job, but I went out on my uncle's boat with him and my two cousins, and we went to this private beach, and it was like a really fun day. And I've been like spending so much time with family, so it's been nice too, because I've like, if it has happened any time of the year, I'm glad it happened leading into summer. And I am so busy that it's just like kind of been a distraction. Every night when I'm falling asleep, though, I replay getting laid off in my head. If you saw Inside Out 2, I would really like anxiety to stop sending me those projections. Joy, let's get in there and knock that off. But it's fine. And I know I'm going to be fine. I'm mostly just like pissed off. But yeah. So anyway, I started saying this and then I stopped. So I was like, last summer when it happened, I didn't talk about it right away. And I had my last day of work, and then the next day I flew to LA to see Taylor Swift. So I just like went through that whole LA trip. Like, I was like kind of being like hinty of like, I'm going through some changes right now. And then eventually I posted, I don't even remember how I posted it in my story, that I didn't have a job anymore. And then this time around, though, I at first was like, I'm not going to post. I was like, I don't owe anyone anything. And there are now 30,000 people following me. When I got laid off last summer, I only had 10,000 followers. So I was like, which is still a lot of people, but I'm like, I don't owe, like, these 30,000 people don't need to know this about me. And like, only like 1,500 people saw my story. So not all my followers knew, obviously, but I was like, I don't need to post this. Like, but then I was thinking about it though. And like, I like talking about my life and what's going on in my life. So then I was like, maybe I'll just say it on the podcast. But then I just posted it. And when I posted, it was like a screenshot of a text I sent to one of my friends. I just got laid off. And I was like, well, my day took a turn and I was like, I know I'm going to be okay. This is not ruining my summer. And I was like, I'm sharing this because last summer, like me and my fellow unemployed girlies were like a really great emotional support to each other. So whatever, I shared it. And also because it's like my life looks different now. And people are all like, people already leave me comments of like, do you have a job because of how much I read? So like, now, no, I don't have a job. So how much I read is going to uptick. Guys, I think I might read 300 books this year, which is a really fucking crazy statement to just throw out like as a random train of thought I just had. But I just hit 150 today on July 7th and like I don't have a job. So we'll see. Anyway, first of all, I want to say people who messaged me, it was so sweet. Thank you. I don't post things like that for pity, but it was like just like really sweet. And it was a little funny how people are like, again. And I'm like, yeah, I fucking know. Again. I got laid off again. Also, okay, another point I wanted to make. Getting laid off, at least in New York where I live, has become so normalized now. In like I felt like I got laid off last summer and like not I was the first of any of my friends, but then in like a month later, it started like everyone I know has either they've been laid off in the last year and a half or someone very close to them has been. So I don't feel as embarrassed to say I was laid off this time around as I did last time because it unfortunately has become so normal, which is also so frustrating because like trying to get a job right now is so fucking hard. Like it took me 6 months last time. So I at least know this time what I'm getting myself into and I know I will survive. That hopefully it doesn't take 6 months, but if it does, like I know I'll be okay. I just like am not looking forward to doing that again. Last point, you might be wondering, Kayla, you're supposed to go to Paris. So I booked this trip to Paris and I did in my head when I was booking it, I was like, because after you're laid off once, I'm going to always expect it to happen now. And I was like, am I shooting myself in the foot with this? But my Paris hotel is non-refundable. So I still will be going to Paris and to London and I'm going to make it work. Like I got some severance. I have savings. I'm going to have some money coming in. So the only part of it that will look different is that I was planning on buying myself a very expensive handbag. That probably won't happen now, but my Paris trip is still happening. Anyway, I don't want to just talk about this in the beginning because it's like insane, but also last things. I keep saying that if you are going through this, I feel you and I am here for you and we will all get jobs and we'll all be happy. But before I got laid off, my mom and I had started watching the America's Sweethearts, the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders documentary on Netflix. And oh my God, I am so obsessed. We have now finished, so I won't say any spoilers, but I grew up in a Dallas Cowboys household, which maybe sounds weird because I'm from New York, but they're kind of like America's team. My dad is a Cowboys fan, so my brother was. So like, and I was a cheerleader, and the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders are dancers, not cheerleaders, but it was still like such a thing in my household. So I had seen a bunch of episodes of Making the Team, the CMT show, but I loved this one and I have so many thoughts on it. So if you're not aware what this is, it's like they followed last year's team of Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders from auditions through to the whole season. So it was really cool because the audition process took up, I would say, like the bulk of the series, and you would get attached to these girls, and it was like wild to watch the process. It is obviously insane. Like these girls don't get paid enough. The standard of even just of beauty that they have to uphold is so wild. But I came away from it being like, I admire these women, meaning the girls on the team, so much more, like just knowing everything that they go through and how talented they are, and they seem like genuine nice people. And now I'm like, I need to learn the Thunderstruck dance. I just have had that song in my head nonstop. So I was watching that before I got laid off, and then I was like, it was nice to have something I was really into to tune into and kind of shut my brain off. So if you're looking for something to watch, highly recommend. Let's just start talking about books. So the theme of this week's episode is books that helped me disassociate. So I've actually been powering through some great reads, and in the week I got laid off, in this last week, I had some really great reads and they helped me. Like I always use books to escape, and they helped me kind of just like escape the trauma that I went through on Monday. The first book, though, I actually read the day before I got laid off. So the day before my life went to shit a little bit. But I loved it so much. I wanted to talk about it anyway. So whatever, it helped me. It was a rainy Sunday when I read this, so it helped me disassociate from the fact that I couldn't go to the beach or to the pool. And that book is Under Your Spell by Laura Wood. So a little bit of backstory that I didn't post about on Kara What. When I had my Barnes Noble event where I interviewed Janet Skilskin Charles, before I went to a pre-drinks thing with Janet and the team from Atria, who was the publisher. And while I was there, I obviously met the people who work at Atria, and they were asking me what I like to read. And I was like, historical fiction, romance, and thrillers. Those are my big three. That's how I always like describe it, if you guys are wondering. And they were like, you have to read this book we're working on, Under Your Spell. And they were like, we're not just saying it because it's our title, but it is so good. And we're talking about like the theme of Hollywood romances, and they were like, this is like that but music. And so I actually already had an arc from them, and so I like bumped this up and I put this on my like summer backlist challenge reading list. I loved this so much, and I know this kind of sounds like defeating the purpose of it, but I loved it because it wasn't so music-y. Like, you guys know I love a Hollywood romance and I love anything about music, but I find sometimes with music books, it's a little cringy. And I think it's because when like they're saying the song lyrics, I'm like, this is kind of cringe. Like, and we have only ever had like a Daisy Jones experience where then we got to hear the actual song. So this one though, like, you don't really, it's not about the music that they're making. It's just about the fact that he's an artist. And I think that's part of why it really worked for me. So our main girl is Clementine, and she kind of like hates all musicians. She barely listens to music because her dad is one of the most famous rock stars in the world. This takes place in England. So she's English, the dad's English. I pictured him as like a cross between Jagger and Keith Richards, but he's like a piece of shit. And like, I'd like to hope those guys were like better dads than this guy. And her dad got 3 women pregnant at the same time. And so her and her sisters have different moms with the same dad, and they're all only like a few months apart. And the moms raised them in one house together. And so she was kind of always like tabloid fodder because of who her dad is and like the way that her and her sisters were raised together. But her dad like sucks. He's an absent parent. She talks a lot about how when she was little and he would just like ignore her, and like she has a lot of trauma with that. And then when she was a teenager, her first real relationship was with a musician, and I won't say what happened, but he ends up like screwing her over, and it just like really, really messed with her. So now she is in her early 30s, and her dad's manager, who like she and her sisters were all very close with, has passed away. So also like when the book opens though, she just broke up with her longtime boyfriend. He got another girl pregnant and is engaged to her and moving in with her. And he took like all the furniture and her cat. So like her life is like falling apart. And her sisters, as a joke, cast a breakup spell. And that's where the title, like Under Your Spell, comes from. Like, there's no real magic in this. It's just the fact that they did that. I think the title is honestly a little bit misleading, but they do that in like the opening of the book. And then the dad's manager dies and she goes to the funeral, and then the moms hosted the like wake at their house after. So when she's there, she's like overwhelmed from the amount of people, and her dad is there like being his like charming charismatic self, and she like needs a break from it because like everyone loves him obviously, and she needs a break from it. So she goes into her childhood bedroom, and there's this really hot guy there, and they have a one night stand, and she's like, that was like the best sex of my entire life, and she never hears from him again. So then it's like a month or 2 later, and one of her sisters, both sisters actually work in music. One of them is like a label exec and the other one is an artist. So it is interesting how like they kind of leaned into their music background, and she fully shunned it. Like I said, she doesn't even listen to music. So the sister who works for a label is like, I have a job for you, because she also lost her job. I don't know if I mentioned that in the beginning. Relatable. But I don't have a sister setting me up with a rock star. Spoiler alert for what I'm about to say. So her sister is like, I have a job for you. My artist, his name is like, what is his name? His name is Theo Elliott, and he is like the hottest rock star. He gave off Harry Styles vibes because he was in a band and then went solo and was super successful, but he's like late 30s, early 40s. Like he's supposed to be older than Harry is. I can't honestly think of an artist of that age that I would really compare him to. So it was like, imagine if Harry was like 10 years older. But he hasn't turned in his album yet. Like it's really late and they're sending him to this house in Northumberland, like on the coast, this little cottage, which is actually like the girls' grandparents' cottage, to get his album done. And the sister says to Clemmy, the girl, your job is to just like be his assistant and like take care of like anything he needs while he's there. So she meets him and it turns out that he's the hot guy she had the one night stand with. So they go up and they are locked in a cottage together. So it's forced proximity. You forget he's famous because for most of the book, they're just alone together. And it is so fucking good. I was swooning for this man. Like there's a scene where she gets sick, like with the flu, and the way that he was taking care of her, I was like, this is the hottest thing I've ever read. Like I loved him so much. So most of the book is them like in the cottage as he's working on his album, and then they do enter the real world, and that's kind of when like reality swoops back in and you can guess what happens because he's this like extremely famous rock star, and she's also like, the public know who she is though. So I really really love this. Like I was smiling so much. It is heavier with the things with her dad, but it's also, there's like really interesting narratives on celebrity, and like I really think, I'm not like, Daisy Jones doesn't count in this because there's a difference between like music romance and like music books. This is my favorite music romance I've ever read. Like it really just hit so hard. And like by the time we got to the song lyrics, I was already in love with the couple and they were good song lyrics. So I was like swooning like Clemmy was listening to the songs he wrote about her. But so good. And I honestly am shocked. I have not seen this posted anywhere on Bookstagram. So I hope I can convince some of you guys to read this because I loved it so much. I think it deserves so much praise. Everyone should pick it up. Like it's a perfect summer read too because you're just not going to want to put it down. So you could read it in like a day at the pool or at the beach or in the AC. I gave it 4 stars. I loved it. That's Under Your Spell by Laura Wood. The next book I read, so last Sunday I finished Under Your Spell and then I started this book, and it is If Something Happens to Me by Alex Finlay. And I have not stayed up late reading a thriller in so long, but I was like honestly contemplating. I was reading on my Kindle so I could see how much time I had left, and I was debating staying up until like 2 a.m. finishing it because I was so fucking into it. I could not stop. I didn't though. So I think I stopped with like 70% left and I saved it for Monday. And then I woke up on Monday and got laid off. Actually, I got laid off at noon. So I'd already done a few hours worth of work, like a nice little fuck you on your way out to me. And although I did get paid for the day. So I guess it evens out, but still, it's annoying. Okay. But then I went to the pool and I was like glad I had a thriller like this that had already been so into. And I I love this, the back 30%. I ended up giving this 4 stars. Honestly, though, if I hadn't just been laid off, it probably would have been a 5-star read because I was just, my body and my brain were literally in shock when I was finishing it. But I loved it so much. And it got me thinking about this author, Alex Finlay, who I'm pretty sure is a man. So sorry. But I've read, I think, 2 other books of his and I really love them. And after I loved this one too, I was like, why don't I like talk about this author more? I feel like I need to go through and like read his backlist because his thrillers are so, so good. And this one was really unique. So there's a few different timelines and things happening here. I think the best way, though, is to talk about it through the lens of Ryan, who is one of the main characters. And when he was a senior in high school, like 5-ish years ago, they're like in a small town, I think in Kansas City. So shout out Travis. And him and his girlfriend Allie are like so in love with each other. They just graduated high school and they're like in the car together at like the Lover's Lane type place. And they're like talking, like you assume that they're about to do it for the first time, and they're also talking about how they're like scared to leave each other for college. They're both going to different schools, when all of a sudden someone yanks open Allie's car door, pulls her out. Ryan's door's open and he's knocked out and he's thrown out of the car, and he wakes up there unconscious hours later, and Allie and the car are gone. And if this becomes one of the biggest cold cases in America, Allie is never seen again. They eventually linked it to the serial killer that was working in the area because her DNA was found on his pillow, but Ryan was never really able to escape the suspicion that he had something to do with it. So he changes his name. I think he was like a star athlete, but he like stopped playing. It was basketball. And we meet him now. It's a few years later, and he is in law school under a different name. And he, along with a group of his like fellow students, was chosen to go on this like trip to Italy. Not sure how it ties into their studies, but whatever. So he's on this trip. And when he's there one day, and well, it's also like very clear that he is still so in love with Allie and like not able to get over everything he went through, but also the loss of her. And one day, though, he gets this note that says something like, "I know who you are," something like that. It might have said something about Allie too. So he goes to this train station to meet the person who sent him that note, and then his timeline just goes off. Then there's another perspective of this girl who is a rookie cop in the like police station in the town where Allie lived and went missing. And she, like her first day on the job, they find a car in the lake where Ryan and Allie were. And it turns out that it's Allie's dad's car. So suddenly her case is reopened, and this police officer who is new is looking at it with fresh eyes. And the detectives who were in charge at the station, like when Allie first went missing, were very old friends. It was kind of an old boys club. So she is re-looking into everything and everyone. And there's a third perspective, which this one was my favorite, because the last time I was unemployed, as you may know, my show was The Sopranos, and also help me decide what my unemployment show should be this time. But this third timeline is Sopranos vibe. So we're in Philly, and we're basically following actually, I think you have some chapters from the perspective of the Tony Soprano guy, but then also a guy who owed them a debt and is now being forced to work as their accountant. So eventually the timelines come together, but I thought this was so good. The Sopranos mob element, I mean, I probably would have loved the mob element before I watched The Sopranos, but now I was like, oh my God, picturing Tony and Carmela. I really, really enjoyed this. I was gripped in right away. It has been a long time. Like, I can't even remember the last thriller I read that I was so hooked into like this. Perfect, like beach read. You know, I love to read about murder on the beach. If this was able to help me disassociate the day I got laid off, then I think that just shows how fully immersed you'll be in this book. I gave it 4 stars. If I didn't get laid off, I probably would have given it 5 though. I loved it so much. That is If Something Happens to Me by Alex Finlay. The book is The Rom-Commers by Katherine Center, and I am thrilled to report that I loved this book. So my first Katherine Center book was a few years ago. I read The Bodyguard. I gave it 5 stars. I was obsessed with it. I do own, I think it's Things We Save in a Fire or something like that. I haven't read it yet because her book that came out last year, I don't even remember the title. I did not like it. It did not do it for me. And it was so disappointing after I loved The Bodyguard. So when I saw this one coming out, I loved the premise of it, but I was a little bit worried because I was like, is The Bodyguard kind of just like, oh, what word am I looking for? Not like a one and done, but just like the odd one out of her books for me. That's not the word I was looking for, but we're going with that. So I loved this though, and I'm so happy that I loved it. This is another Hollywood romance, and you guys just know I'm a freaking sucker for Hollywood romances. But honestly, at this point, there are so many romance books about and that take place in Hollywood that it's getting harder for them to stand out. And this one really stood out to me. This one is about screenwriters, which How to End a Love Story also was. They're just so different. Like, I wouldn't even compare them, except for the screenwriter a bit. So our main girl is Emma, and she is an aspiring screenwriter. She's always writing stuff, but she is kind of she is a full-time caretaker for her father, who is paralyzed on one side of his body from this like insane rock climbing accident that we end up learning more about in the book, so I won't talk about it. But she's kind of given up all of her dreams so that her younger sister can go to college and like take care of all of her dreams. And the sister has just graduated when the book opens, and now it's supposed to be Emma's turn. So Emma gets a call one day from a high school ex-boyfriend and like one of her closest friends who now lives in LA and is an agent. And he's like, hey, I forgot the main guy's name, of course. She's like, Charlie Yates needs someone to rewrite his script. And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because Charlie Yates is like the most famous screenwriter. He is her favorite screenwriter. He's like a young hot guy, and he has already had so much success. He's won Oscars. Like, she's obsessed with him in all of his movies. And so basically what happened is Charlie has to put out a rom-com in order to get like this mafia movie that he wrote and made, which he really wants to get made. So he writes the rom-com script, and it is so bad. So his agent is like, we need someone to fix this up. So he reaches out to Emma because Emma's whole life is rom-com. So she leaves her dad, which is a very like big deal and traumatic thing for her, and she goes out to LA. And it turns out like Charlie didn't even know she was coming, and like a bunch of shit happens, but basically he accepts that he needs Emma to help him. So she helps him, and she moves in with him for like the month or so that they are contracted to work on the script together. And obviously you can guess what happened. Their banter together and like the character of Charlie, like I was laughing out loud. I was smiling so much. It was so good, so much fun. But there's also really serious things at play with Emma and her dad, obviously, but also then Charlie has his own shit. So it's like balanced out in that respect. But he also like does not think rom-coms are like a real genre. So you see her, it's really like a love letter to romance and the genre, because Emma teaches him the importance of it and the joy of it and like everything that goes into making rom-coms what they are. And so you see them write the script together while also falling in love, and they're living together. Obviously a bunch of stuff happens. There's not too much I can say without spoiling, which I'm sorry, but I really, really love this. I read it in like a day. I think I read the first 50 pages one night, and then the next day I finished it like basically in one sitting. I couldn't put it down. I was reading this at the pool. I was in public, like smiling, laughing, just like, you know, those memes where you're just like holding a book and like kicking your feet. Like I felt like that was me. I loved Emma and Charlie. I loved their banter. I was just like, I'm so happy that I loved it too, because now I know that like I don't need to write off this author. Maybe that was just like, that book wasn't for me. The last one, I gave it 4 stars. It is so much fun. I feel like I need to do like another like list of all my favorite Hollywood romance books, because there are just so many at this point. I don't have mood reads this week because I'm not fully prepared, but I had to contemplate which books to talk about this week. So who knows? I might talk about them in the future. I'm just going to quickly run you through some other books that I've enjoyed lately that I haven't covered. Yesterday I read Honey by Isabel Banta. This is a kind of like, it's like it reads very literary fiction, but it is about a pop star coming up in the early 2000s. It reminded me of The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes, which I really loved. Really, really enjoyed that. I read At Summer's End by Courtney Ellis, which is a major Downton Abbey vibe, so always love that. And then I think that's it, because that's all I read in July. And I'll talk about them all though on my July wrap up. So a little programming note, if you've made it this far, I know I've been telling you guys, there might be full episodes every Monday, that it might be author interviews. I have decided that I need a little bit of a break, just with everything that has happened in the last week. And I want to, now that I don't have to worry about work while my family's here and I'm going to be traveling next week, I'm taking my first ever little PBG break, but there will still be episodes for you guys. So the next 2 weeks, there will be author interviews. They are very exciting. I know you will enjoy them. And then I will be back the last week of August with a full episode, and then book club. I'll be back the last week of July, on July 29th, with a book club with a normal episode, and then book club is that week on the 1st. That episode though will be out after my 30th birthday, but I'll probably record it before. So it's really going to be the following week on my July wrap-up episode where we go in about my Mamma Mia themed 30th birthday party, which like planning has fully commenced, like all the fun little bits. I have so many things to design in Canva. My cousin's painting shit for me. We sat and ordered like all the decorations. I'm so fucking excited. I'll obviously be sharing so much of it on my Instagram. I wish you guys could all come. But yeah, that's happening on July 27th. So I will see you guys after that. I hope you understand. I just need to have like a little bit of a break and take care of myself. And I want to fully enjoy, like, a lot of my family, well, not a lot, but like some of my family lives out of state, and it's like rare that we're all together. So I'm excited to just enjoy that. And I don't have to worry about work. I don't have to worry about like recording. I'm rambling about this. You will have episodes from me in the following weeks. They will just be author interviews. Thank you so much for listening. Please make sure you're following, subscribe, whatever gets you on whatever podcast platform you are listening on. Follow me on Instagram at Karen Watt. Follow the show at Professional Book Girl. Leave a rating and review. It would make me very happy. And read our July book club pick, Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. We will be discussing it on August 1st. Get your thoughts to me by July 30th. Thank you for letting me have like therapy on this episode. I feel better getting that all out over the airwaves. Have a great week. I will talk to you soon.